you just giving one?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't made any marks on it. I've just kind of leafed through and taken a look at things and.
Okay.
Okay. So what do you guys want to talk about here first? Is there a particular topic that you want to run back through? Joe?
Did you just do reducing rather than rational expression, please?
Sure. So if we're talking about reducing, the idea here is basically we just need to get everything into a, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Is we just need to get things into a factored form. And then once we've got things factored, we can factors. So maybe we have like oops. All right. So let's say we have something like this and we just want to reduce this. Our first step would be to factor. In factoring, the first thing I'm going to look for is greatest common factors. So in the numerator, I notice that I have a greatest common factor of 8x squared. And in the denominator, I have a greatest common factor of 2x, right? So we have to take those, we have to get things in factored form before we can do, and my goodness, Mr. Kulik. Okay. Last time I'm going to edit this. Gee whiz. Okay. Before we can get things into a place where we can reduce. So I take out my greatest common factors, right?
Yeah.
So I notice that x minus 3, that's done. Nothing more to do there. But x squared minus 5x minus 24 looks like something we could still reduce. So two things that multiply to give us negative 24 and add to give us negative 5 are negative 8 and positive 3. Oh, gosh, let's do that. So let's make it positive 8 and negative 3. And now that I've got everything factored up, we can work on reducing. So the x minus 3's can cancel. The 2 and the 4, or the 2 and the 8 can reduce. And then the x and the x squared can reduce. So we'd left with like 4x over x plus 8. Haley.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a question. So if there was like on the top, if there was another thing in parentheses that was like x plus 4 or something, could you reduce like the x plus 4 and like the x plus 8?
No.
So you have to keep it in the parentheses?
Yes.
Okay.
So the big thing with the reducing is this you can never do because there's a plus sign in between them, right? We can do like this because there's multiplication in between the things that we're reducing. So if you have a plus sign outside of a set of parentheses or a minus sign outside of a set of parentheses, it's not in a state where you can reduce. Okay, which is kind of what we'd have going on here. Is that okay?
Yeah.
What else do you guys want to talk about?
We do an adding and subtracting one.
Sure. Okay. So here's an adding and subtracting problem. So first thing we need to do is find a least common denominator. To do that, I'm going to start by factoring anything that I can. So multiplies to 24 and adds to give me 10 is 4 and 6. 32 and adds to give me 12 is 4 and 8. So if I look at my denominators, then I see three distinct factors. I see x plus 4, I see x plus 6, and I see x plus 8. So that's going to be my least common denominator. If I look at my first fraction, I have the x plus 4, and I have the x plus 6, but I'm missing the x plus 8. So I'm going to multiply that. And then I'll look at the second fraction. I have the x plus 4, the x plus 6, bottom of that fraction. So now they have the same denominator, right? The two fractions. So if I look at the denominators, I see one distinct factor, a second distinct factor, and then a third distinct factor, right? It doesn't matter how many times that showed up, it has to show up once. At least once, I should say. So those became my factors. Now, if I look at each individual fractions, none of those factors are used more than once in a single fraction. Agreed? Okay. So that means that they're all just used one time in the LCD, and that's my LCD. Good? So then what I did is I'm like, okay, so this is the denominator I need these fractions to have. In order to turn the first, or make that first fraction have that LCD, I needed to put in the x plus 8. Have the x plus 8. So I multiply to the top and bottom, which is just the same as multiplying by 1, right? And I'm allowed to do that because it doesn't change anything. Just looks different. Is that okay? Yeah. And if I go to the second fraction, I am missing x plus 6 from the LCD, right? If I look at the denominator for the second fraction, it doesn't have the x plus 6 in it. So I multiply that to the top and bottom. Again, same thing as multiplying by 1, doesn't really change anything. Is that okay? And that gives me this thing in red that I've just written that I still need to do a little bit of work with, but that's where we're at. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I reduce this? No is the correct answer. Why not? See the subtraction symbol outside of a set of parentheses? Cannot reduce in this situation. What should I do in this situation? I should multiply out the numerator and combine like terms. So foiling or multiplying or distributing or whatever the multiplication is that's going on up there. Is everybody okay with that? So here, all I need to do is just, if you wanted to do it before, you can put it into one parenthesis, but not both.
Okay.
Doesn't matter which one.
Okay.
Can you just tell me the equation? So when we're in this form, and and the vertical asymptote is x equals negative d over c. So it's a different rule than what we had in the other form. Right? The other way we could y equals k, and the vertical equals h. So recognizing with is pretty important. To fill this out for everybody else, there's other people that were following along that needed more than just what you asked about. ID. So my vertical asymptote is negative 2 over 1, or just negative 2. And my horizontal asymptote is 3 over 1. Once I have the vertical asymptote in the middle, points on either side of my vertical asymptote. So I'm just going to pick the x's by just choosing a whole number smaller than my vertical asymptote. I just picked the 3 in a row there that are bigger and smaller. To get the y values then, I'm going to be plugging that value for x into my function and then evaluating. I find that the easiest way to do that, what's going on here, stupid machine, is to use the fractions function on my calculator, so I can type it in just like it looks like on my sheet of paper. Come on. Just flipping open already. All right. So to get to the fraction command, I'm going to press alpha and y equals and choose the first option. And then let's say I'm going to plug negative 5 into this. So I'm going to do 3 times negative 5 minus 1, all in the, and then I'll move my cursor so it's going to do negative 5 plus 2. And then move my cursor so it's outside of the fraction. If I press enter right now, it's going to report this answer as a fraction rather than a decimal. If I'm graphing, I'd rather have decimals. It's easier to plot those. So I'm going to go and press the math button. Oh, darn it. Confound it. It didn't take the negative sign when I pressed it on the there. There we go. Okay. So that first value is 5.33 or 5.3 repeating or whatever. Now, the nice thing about doing it this way is I can now just take that previous answer and go back and change that negative 5 to a negative 4 and then press enter again. So if I press enter, it'll give me the last thing that I typed in. So I can take that and just update it to be negative 4. And then press enter again. And I can just keep doing this over and over and over again, right? Is that okay with you guys?
So for the decimal, you just click the math button, then there's like a function that says decimal.
Yep, DEC. Yep. And it just needs to go at the end of whatever it is you're typing in, and it'll automatically, whatever it is, it's going to give it to you as a decimal rather than a fraction. And again, if worse comes to worse and you forget that, you can always just type the fraction as, like if you got 10/7 or something, you can just do 10 divided by 7 in your calculator and give you the decimal that way also. Yes?
Can you do one of the solving problems?
Sure.
Like the fraction and equals?
So let's say we have something like this. Look good? So if you have a proportion, which is just one fraction equal to another fraction like this, we can just cross multiply. And that's going to change this from a fractions problem So far, so good? So to solve this, I'm just going to FOIL everything out. Oops. +4 minus 6 is 2. Of course. So it's something like this. So far, so good? So what I have is a polynomial equation. To solve this, I'm going to get everything onto one side. So when I subtract x squared from both sides, the right-hand side, I just have an x squared. If I add 3x to both sides, I get just an x. If I add 10 to both sides, I get a -2. And there's just a 0 left on the other side. Okay with that? So then I have to look at what type of polynomial equation I have. In this case, I have a quadratic. To solve a quadratic, I can either factor or use the quadratic formula. In this case, this is factorable, so I'm going to use the quadratic formula. The two numbers that multiply give me -2 and add to give me +1. So my solutions would be -2 and +1. And then to just finish things off, I need to take the solution and check to make sure it's not extraneous by plugging it into the denominator. I don't care what I get, it just can't be 0. So -2 minus 3, -2 minus 5, neither of those is 0. 1 minus 3, 1 minus 5, neither of those is 0. So these answers are good. If one of the answers does give a 0 denominator, you just discard it, and you're fine. Now, this piece here doesn't always have to be a quadratic. You could have something that's linear. You could have something that's bigger than quadratic. So you have to be a little bit careful about how you're going to solve it. Not every time you need to use a quadratic formula or to factor. If you get something linear, it could be easier than that. I don't think you'd get something harder than that on the test, though. Joe?
So basically, you're just cross-multiplying, then you're foiling, and adding your like terms?
Moving everything to one side, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you solve, just like you would have in, chapter 4 or earlier.
Yeah. Oh, Mr. Kulik, I have a general question, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So for multiplying, rational can do that, but is it similar like to reducing an expression kind of?
Yes.
You like find the factor almost, kind of just cross multiply, or you know what I mean, like cross out the things?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's ostensibly still the same skill.
Like same process, okay.
Yes. Just a little bit bigger, but it's, more things to factor, but.
Right, but then at the end you end up just, you can cross through both parts, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's essentially just one big fraction.
All right.
Yes, that is correct. Well, you guys, what do you think?
Not horrible.
You ready to give it another go here? Okay. So go ahead and clear your stuff other than something to write with in your calculator if you want it.
Mr. Fuller, I hate to do that, guy, but do you have a calculator charger by any chance?
A calculator charger?
Yeah, for one of these ones.
Yeah, but I don't, it's like plugged in at my desk already, like into my power strip.
Okay.
So
No big deal, man.
I think Woody's here gonna loan you one. He has
Thank you.
super prepared here.
Thank you,
So if you did this online, that's your situation, Drew?
Yes,
Okay, so if you did that, just take out your tablet and you can update what you did and just re-email me when you're finished.
I did on line paper, but I don't even have the line paper anymore.
But you should have the email you sent to me with it in there.
Yeah, but I don't.
So you could drag those into OneNote and like make marks on the side if you wanted to. That's probably the easiest thing for you to do. Does that work?
Probably.
Okay. Holler at me if you get into trouble, and I might be able to find your thing and just put it in your OneNote if you can't figure it out by the time I'm done passing these notes. That was really fun. And Geronimo, I have your test here with me in the room. If you want to come back and grab it, you can work on it a little bit more here, or you can go and take it and bring it back to the media center. Either is okay with me. And those of you that are working from home that did the test at home, again, you guys should have your stuff with you or your OneNote with your test in it. You can go ahead and add stuff to that and then send me an email when you're done making your updates or whatever with your test in it, just like you did before. Okay, there are tests out. Stop your talking, please. Drew Siegner, did you figure it out?
Yeah, I honestly don't think I'm even gonna edit it. I don't know what I should do with it.
I'm sorry, you mumbled at the end? What's the problem?
There's no problem.
There's no problem. Hi. Sure.
With these still were right though. Even because of these numbers, these still right.
Very likely they could have been. Yeah.
But they were because I just.
There would not necessarily be wrong if you did those other pieces wrong.
Yeah, I just see visual.